everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, good. Like 10 minutes ago, the room was almost empty. Now it's almost full. It's 2 p.m., so I think it's time to start. So first of all, thank you that the room is really full. 10 minutes ago, I was really scared that no one will come, aside, of course, of the group that took the best seats on the sofas. So kudos to you. It's good to come early. But it's good to see all of you here. My name is Tymon Smektala. I am a franchise director for Dying Light series. And I'm here to tell you about 9 design truths I have learned while working in game development along those years that I have spent in the industry, and now I would like to share those truths with you. I think it's important to kind of know what you're getting into. I know that there are a couple of other talks at the same time, so I think you will be interested, you will say yay for what will happen over the next few dozen minutes if you're generally interested in the craft of making games, and if you're constantly looking for tricks, tips, insights, cool secret techniques that make game development easier and more effective. I think you will like this if you have a resistance to dry jokes, or suchary, as we call them in Poland, because that was the first one. It works because I tend to make my talks a little bit on the lighter note, a little bit more funnier. At least I think that they are funnier. You will see for yourself. You will get bored. You will say, "Oh, I'm in a wrong place. I should be somewhere else." Of course, if you're a game developer with 20 years of experience in the industry, so if Hideo Kojima is here, apologies, son, you will get bored. Another suhar. And of course, you might get bored or maybe doze off if you had too many leżaks yesterday, which I actually think a couple of you might have had. Okay. These will be design truths. These will be some things I have learned. But I think it's important to know who I am, because you will be able to see at those things from my lenses and kind of, again, know what to expect. So, okay, the slide is full. Currently, I am a franchise director at Techland. Hopefully, I am a good spirit at the company, and that's true for 10 years. Franchise director is a very boring and very scary position. Actually, I miss being a game designer, which I was for many years. I was actually a member of the game industry for more than 20 years, because I started as a game journalist. I worked at a magazine called CD Action, which you might actually know even here in Czech. It was big in Poland, so that's how you might know it. I also have PhD in economics. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. I published 4 music albums. I was a rapper, so I can say yo and rhyme stuff and all of those other things. And I have also published 3 books on mostly on public relations, because I was into public relations for some time after studies. And I also helped to write a lexicon of hip-hop music. So I did quite a lot. But as a game developer, what I did, I started in 2015 with Dying Light. I was hired to be a producer, but I say producer because I never really produced a thing. They asked me, they hired me to become a spokesperson for the game, which was forming back then. But because it was forming, because the game was in its very early stages, there was not really that much to talk about. So I got into game design, I became a junior game designer, and then I went the whole route from being a junior game designer to being a regular and senior game designer on Dying Light. Then when we were working on Dying Light the following, I became the lead game designer. Again, lead because the team I think it was 2 game designers, including me, so not that much of a team to lead. One thing here is that the dates are when the games were released. I joined Techland, as I said, 10 years ago, so in 2013. So lead game designer on the following, I think it's the project that I love most and I'm mostly proud of. Why? Because all of our big guys, the CEO of the company, the creative director, all of those guys, they went on vacation after the success of Dying Light, so we could do anything that we wanted. So it was really a blast. Then things got more serious. We started working on Dying Light 2, Stay Human, where again I was a lead game designer, this time actually a real lead game designer. I was leading a team that was working on the game. So those are my experiences. I would love to have more. I would love to see and learn how other companies are working. I would love to see and learn how you can work on a game which is not a zombie open world action RPG, but maybe a strategy game or maybe an adventure game. I would love to experience that, but fortunately or unfortunately, I'm a Dying Light guy, it seems. That's why I'm very open and I attend a lot of conferences like this to learn how games are done. And I also think that it's important for me to tell you about what I have learned, and actually I will get to that in a second. So 9 design truths I learned from other people, and now I would like to share them with you. What you will see in the talk, there will be real people that I have interacted with or at least heard what they have to say. And I feel that those things make sense for game development, are important for game development. Maybe some of those will feel like very high level, maybe very generic, maybe too broad. Don't expect me to go into too many details because it's 9, it's not 999, it's just 9, so I had to choose the most important ones. Maybe some of those things will be obvious to you, but then I also think, and I have also experienced this a lot, it's very important to remind yourself about the most obvious things as you work on games, as you do basically anything, because it's very easy to forget about them in a minute-to-minute work. So, 9 design truths. I started saying how I feel it's important to share what you have learned, and actually that's the first truth. It's not really one of the 9. It's a bonus truth, and it's a quote by Dalai Lama. I know the guy doesn't have the best press recently. Let's not go into that. But he said one thing which I think actually makes a lot of sense. He said, "Share your knowledge because it's a way to achieve immortality." Actually, the thing that you see it's a picture from our old office. Like when you were entering Techland offices, like the previous office that we had, we had like, of course, those motivational quotes all over the walls, and it was one of those. Of course, first time when I entered, I said, corpo stuff, motivational quotes on the wall. Who they're cheating. But this actually makes sense, and I think this is very important, especially for game designers, that they share their knowledge. And I will explain that a couple of times during the presentation, during the talk. Why it's important? As you can see, like a nice clip art stolen from the internet graphic. Game designer. Game designer is a person very unique in game development because we are usually in the center of things, but we are surrounded by people who know way more than we do. We just know Excel, we just know scripts, but then you work with programmers, with animators, with 3D modelers, with concept artists, people who have like a real craft in their brains and in their heads. And game design is a little bit like public relations or any other discipline where it's not really clear what are the rules, how it's shaped, what it really means, what the craft is. So, as I said, we are probably the people with the least amount of specialist knowledge. That's why it's important to be the knowledge repository for the whole team. So that's the first thing where you have to share. You have to know everything about the project that you work on, and you have to share that knowledge. But another thing is that we are all game designers. At least I believe most of you are here in the room. And we are all in this scary position when there's a programmer looking at us and an animator looking at us and a modeler looking at us, and they all want answers to their questions. They all want their problems or their question marks answered, solved. And it's really scary from time to time. It's easy to get an imposter syndrome if you are a game designer. So that's why it's important that we game designers share the knowledge that we have learned, because it makes our lives easier and it makes the situation less scary. And there is a chance that you might learn from someone something that will save your ass in a conversation with a programmer, for example. So, like, my thing is that I go to a lot of conferences, I try to read a lot of books, I try to watch a lot of movies, and I'm happy if I'm able to take just one thing out of all of them. Like I can read a book which is 500 pages and the author thinks that he gives me 5 tips or advantages or some suggestions on each page. So this means 2,500 suggestions and advices. But if I remember just one, then I'm happy. Like, because this is basically as much as we can take from such thing. Then we read another one and have another conversation and another conversation, and this builds our knowledge. So I hope that you will at least take one thing that you will like as we move along from the design tools that I will say. And maybe if it's share your knowledge, then I'm happy, because then like the circle will keep going, the snowball will keep getting bigger. So now let's get to the main thing, which is the design tools I have learned. So the first one is from a guy named Alex Mandryka. Alex Mandryka was a part of the Ubisoft family of studios corporation. He was also a part of the famous editorial at Ubisoft. It was a group of people who were basically assessing and deciding about the future of all of the projects. Later he started he called his company Game Whispering. It was like external specialist who was going to studios, freelancer, consultant who was giving studios advice. And one time he came to us, to Techland, and he had a really nice talk about what it means to be a game designer, how to approach game designer, explain some of the methodologies used at Techland. A lot of like practical stuff, but one thing that stuck in my head, and I started using it, and I think it actually works, is that to look at game design as game design is player behavior. What that means is that, like, when we are game designers, we usually think, okay, let's make the coolest feature possible, let's make a complex system, let's make a game mechanic that's really intricate. But what we are really designing is we're not designing those things, we're not designing those systems, we are designing player behavior. Our decisions make people behave in a specific way. They make them do specific things in a game, they make them have specific emotions and react to those emotions with specific behaviors. Again, maybe not much, maybe quite obvious, but when you start looking at your designs from this perspective, it's really like if you had like a can opener. It really allows you to make better decisions if you think about what kind of behavior your design, your proposal, your balanced tweak will incite in players. It's almost like a lockpick to solving design problems. Another guy, another truth, Albert Einstein. I would love to meet him. Unfortunately, it's not so easy these days. But he said one thing, and actually that's another one that was on the Techland offices. That's a long one. If you have 1 hour to solve a problem, spend thinking 55 minutes on the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solutions. Of course, depending on which part of the internet you read the quote, sometimes it's 55 and 1 minute, sometimes it's 50 and 10. It doesn't matter. What it means is that the majority of time that you need to spend when solving a problem is on actually asking yourself, why are you solving the problem and what is the problem that you're solving? This nice picture here presents a frame which is filled with some marks, and this is what we as game designers do. We get a frame from our game director, from project leads, and we need to fill that frame with our designs. Like, you can design enemy behavior or player skill in any way you want. But if you have a direction, if you have a frame that defines, that gives the mandate to design that specific feature, then only then you'll be able to choose the design that will actually fit your game. So what we are doing is we're filling the frame. So of course the frame should be well defined. It should be a problem that's well defined. And usually you should get that from, let's say, your game director or any other person on a similar position. But of course it's not always like that. Usually you need to almost define the problem by yourself first, just having some hints, just having some very vague descriptions from your game director. So that's why it's important to start with why. Why am I filling the frame? what is the problem that I'm trying to solve. This allows you to define the frame, and only then you can ask yourself, how will I fill the frame, which means what will my design be. Why is the most important question in game design, way more important than how, because as I said, how, you can have tons of ideas, how to solve, how to, again, design an enemy behavior, but unless you know what kind of behavior you want from the player when he's interacting with that monster, and what kind of hole it fills in the overall design, then you will not be able to choose the best design. And of course, why translates to what problem am I solving, what I want to achieve. And only when you understand this, you will be able to deliver the designs that actually fit, that answer the problem without wasting resources. There are tons of books and other sources which really highlight the importance of why. There's one by a game named Tymon Smektala. He's like a business coach, very well renowned, actually writes a lot of good stuff. He has a book called Start With Why. I just checked in the morning that it's Zacniecie Sprot. Did I say that right? No. Almost, okay. Okay. Maybe after this I will get some smażony syr and this will get better. So, but anyways, I think this is what you should start with. Another one, it's not from this guy actually. In a way it is. So, well, it's not. So the guy on the screen is Matt LeBlanc. Of course you know him, Joe, from France. I was looking, but he's not the guy. There's another guy named Mark LeBlanc. He's like a legendary game designer from US. He spends a lot of time. He's legendary because he started the whole movement of teaching and advocating game design in the United States on the Game Developers Conference, and he actually runs a game developers workshop, game design workshop, which I think he started this about like 20 years ago. But it's very hard to find a good picture of him on the internet, so that's why there's Matt LeBlanc, not the same guy, but I know it draws your attention. So, and what he's like, one thing I have learned at the workshop that he was giving at GDC is again like the one of the 10 commandments of game design: fail fast, fail often, and fail cheap. So, previously we said. I didn't expect that really, that you'd be laughing at the car. So this is a car from this is a picture from a catastrophe that happened in Paris in October 1895. I don't know why you're laughing, but okay, I'm not judging. The thing is that I'm using this slide because the slide was actually used on the GDC workshop I was attending. This kind of inspired me. Okay, so we said that we should think about the problem for 55 minutes. You could say that's overthinking. It is not. But then as you understand the problem, spend 5 minutes, and this is again important, this is connected, on trying to find possible solutions as quickly as possible, just have them. What we usually do as game designers, as game developers, we render the stuff that will happen in-game when we work on it in our heads, like we imagine this. But of course, we are often not really right, we are often not really correct. And there's another saying which says that the best games, they almost tell the developers what needs to happen for them. They guide the developers what works, what doesn't. So as soon as you start experiencing stuff in-game, you will be able to say if the solution, if the design is correct. And another thing is that making games, of course, is complex, it costs a lot, you don't want to invest too much on unnecessary features. So actually it's a problem, it's an issue, it's a problem, it's a pattern that happens quite often, is that game designers tend to, of course they take pride in their work, so what they do, they write those big design documents. They define everything from A to Z. But the reality is that quite often you fail at A, you fail at B, you fail at C of that long document. So it's actually, you need to learn how to test your ideas quickly in spending as little resources as possible, and how to think about your designs so they are presented in steps. That's usually what I do when I write a game design doc, or when I used to write game design docs. I was describing the simple version first. I was defining the questions it needs to answer, the risks, the uncertainties that there are around the design, and only then defining the further steps in less and less detail, reaching the final implementation. So fail fast, fail often, fail cheap, and of course don't be afraid to throw things away. That's another thing that is happening quite a lot. You have something in your game, it doesn't really work, but you spend some resources on it, you spend some love on it, you want it to stay in the game. But then we will also discuss this later. The less clutter, the less of those unfinished, almost working, barely working, not really the best features and elements you have in your game, the less of them you have, the better the game is. That was number 3, and number 4 from another guy, Sid Meier. As you can see, I'm Gen X, at least that's what they tell me. So I kind of spent a lot of time playing games. I played the game from this guy when I was graduating from my primary school to my college. My mother was kind of kicking me out of the house, saying, "Go check if you succeeded, if you wrote the exam good enough to go into the college." I was playing Pirates, and I didn't want to check the stupid college. I wanted to play Pirates because it was one of the best. I would say this is the best game I have ever played. I love this guy, Sid Meier. One thing that he said, so that's kind of truth number 1, but there is a meaning behind it, is that he has a rule. He actually has a few rules that he applies to his work without thinking much. And one of those rules is double it or cut it in half. This relates to balancing systems, balancing your game, balancing your enemies. You have an enemy, the playtesters play the enemy, and they say, "Oh, this enemy is too easy." So you want to, let's say, increase the damage that he deals or increase the health that he has. Of course, it's the simplest approach, but let's use it. So what Sid Meier does is he's not thinking if he should add maybe 15% or 20% or maybe lower it by 5%. What he does is he doubles the number or cuts it in half. What he says is that allows him to move faster, again, to fail fast, fail cheap, fail often, but it is faster, it is a better process. So aside from this being actually quite useful, another thing that it says is that okay, that's a joke, so I will kind of get back a little. Yeah. Another thing that he says is that as a game designer, you should build your set of rules, your commandments that you use without solving the same issue and discovering the wheel every time again. Why it's important? I think this is extremely important because being a game designer is basically this. So, the rocket, the project, is about to blow like somewhere, maybe blow on the ground, but hopefully blow to the moon. It goes fast, you don't know where it's heading, the production moves forward. So anything that can help you in this quite difficult situation is good, is golden. So if you have those quick tips, those rules that you can kind of take off your back pocket and just, okay, double it or cut it in half, you don't think about it, you just apply it, and it works, the better. As a game designer, I have been on a personal quest to find those rules, to define those rules for myself. I think, like everyone, if you start doing this, will have different rules. Some of them will be the same. Some of them will be able to share with each other. Some of them will be different. But I think it's important to have those like rule of thumb, instant access, quick success types of rules. And actually, I did a talk about this some time ago on a conference in Poland called Toolbox of a Resourceful Designer. So if you want, you can find it online. But when I was working on this presentation, I found out that I wasn't the only one, because there are also some other people that were trying to do this. There's a very interesting website where two guys, Noah Fallstein, Hal Barwood, are trying to combine those rules taken from other designers. So they basically go like Jehovah's Witness to all the designers and say, hey, do you have a rule? Please give us your rule. And they put that on that web page. It's kind of outdated right now, but it's still quite a lot of interesting stuff there. So I encourage you to find this. Sid Meier had those 10 rules of game design, from which Double It or Cut It in Half comes. There is, again, quite famous, if you like Deus Ex and those kind of immersive games, document which is Deus Ex rules of role-playing. Again, a set of rules that can be applied almost instantly to a project similar to Deus Ex. So it feels I'm not the only one, and I encourage you to also try to define your own commandments and your own rules. And also I encourage you to read Sid Meier's memoir. It's actually quite interesting. It shows his whole professional story from I think 70s when he started. A very, very interesting and quite enjoyable read. Okay, we're moving forward. Am I talking too fast? Is everything clear for you? Is good? Okay, thank you. Another one is a proof that sharing knowledge is a place to achieve immortality, because this guy, I don't know him. I met him, I saw him once on a game conference, but suddenly he's presented on a big screen in Brno in front of you. You learn about him. Maybe what he say will be interesting to you. Maybe you will pass it to your colleagues, and bam! Suddenly Simon Albert is immortal. That easy. So this guy, he is. I'm afraid that I might be mixing this up, and I don't want to. See, you can be immortal, but someone still might not remember on which project you exactly worked. I think he was either working on Deus Ex game, or he was working at Square Enix Montreal, and I think that's it. Or maybe he was working at one of the games at Arcane Studios. Sorry, Simon Albert, I don't remember, but I remember one thing about what you said, and I would like to share this with you. He said, actually, he had a great talk about level design and how you should pitch your ideas for level design when you are a level designer. Really a great talk, very structured and very convincing. I think it's on YouTube, so if you are a level designer, please also search it and look for it. He mentioned one thing during his presentation, and it wasn't really like a very key to what he was describing. He was talking about pitching, but he said one thing that stuck very much with me, and I started using this. And he said, or like kind of believing in this truth, and as I said, living with this. So he said, design needs language, and what that means is that when we are game designers, what we are doing is a lot of our work is actually communicating the ideas to the community, to the other team members. I do a lot of interactions with community, so like when I say community, communication, community comes next, apologies. What you do as a game designer, you communicate the designs, the visions, the ideas to all team members from different disciplines. So the choice of words is extremely important, and really, like the words, they sell the design. They allow the team members to imagine what you are talking about. So whenever you write a game design document, please think very carefully about the words that you choose, especially when you try to describe a feature. An example, there is like you're working on an enemy and you can call him big guy, and okay, that's a big guy, but if you call him demolisher, then instantly people kind of start getting the fantasy that